All right, everybody. So it's 9:30. We'll get going so we can stay on time. So I'm Brittni Brown, and that's Kristen Williams, and we're the co-chairs for the 30th Rare Plant Conference, which is pretty exciting. Kind of a bummer to celebrate the 30th online, but here we are. So I'll start by introducing the Idaho Native Plant Society president, Mike Mancuso. Michael is a longtime member of the Idaho Native Plant Society and currently serving as the organization's president. He attended his first Idaho Rare Plant Conference in 1991, less than a year after moving to Boise to accept a botany position at the Idaho Natural Heritage Program, part of the Idaho Department of Fish and Game. After 15 years, Michael resigned to start his own small business, Mancuso Botanical Services. Rare plants and rare plant conservation have always been a central part of his work over all these years. As Michael's mentor, Bob Mosley, used to say, plants are cool. So with that, go for it, Mike.
Well, thank you, Brittni. And welcome everyone to the 2022 Rare Plant Conference. I know I recognize some of the names of the participants, but I think it's some new folks too, so that's great to see. Although the conference is virtual this year, I hope you still find it to be a good venue to learn, to share your knowledge, and to feel connected to fellow plant enthusiasts and rare plant advocates. Many people have worked hard to bring this conference to fruition, and I say thank you to everyone. But also want to give a special shout out to a few folks. First, Brittni Brown and Kristen Williams for leading the conference organizing effort. And then to Beth Corbin and Derek Antonelli for their leadership roles in the Southern and Northern Idaho Rare Plant Working Groups, respectively. Their dedication to rare plants in Idaho is second to none. Like Brittni said, this is the 30th Idaho Rare Plant Conference. It's really an impressive number and legacy when you stop to think about it. A reasonable question might be, how did we get to this point? Well, we have to go back to at least November 30th, 1984, the date of the first Idaho Rare Plant Conference. This was a one-day affair held at a motel conference room in Boise, attended by about 30 people with donuts as the food snack of choice. A few of you here for this year's conference may have been at that first conference, but sadly, some of those pioneers are no longer with us. One of these people is Dr. Bob Parenti, who at the time was the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service botanist based out of Boise. And he was the principal organizer for that first Idaho Rare Plant Conference. He pushed for the conference as a way to review the status of a long list of ESA species, candidate species, he had to deal with as his role as the service's lead botanist for Idaho. These candidate species had been published in the Federal Register and therefore had some legal standing. For this reason, a review of the candidate species was the main emphasis of that first Idaho Rare Plant Workshop meeting. But in reality, we need to go back at least a decade before that first Rare Plant Conference to more fully appreciate the groundbreaking work being done to shine a light on rare plant conservation in Idaho. Before that first conference, compiling and reviewing list of rare plants in Idaho was conducted by the Rare and Endangered Plants Technical Committee, formed in 1974, and consisting of a small cadre of volunteers who were part of the Idaho Natural Areas Council. The group consisted mainly of botanists and ecologists, mostly from academia, but also some people with other backgrounds. Their evaluations began to reconcile which Idaho plant species might really be rare and threatened. They published these evaluations in a series of reports beginning in 1979 that became known as the Red Book, in reference to the publication's red cover page. These early Red Books from the late 1970s into early 1980s provided the foundation for all future rare plant lists for Idaho. So it's at the shoulders of those folks that we stand on today. 1984 was also about the time that Idaho Natural Heritage Program got started in Idaho and began to play a role in the Idaho Rare Plant List. This time period also coincides with when the federal agencies had to develop sensitive species lists. They found the conference a good way to get review and reconcile priorities. One important legacy of that first Idaho Rare Plant Conference is that it marked the transition from a review process conducted by a small group of mostly academic volunteers to a broader, expanded participatory process to include land management agencies and other folks interested in rare plant conservation. After 1984, the conference was an annual event for many years before switching to an every other year schedule after 2007. I'm not actually sure when the Native Plant Society began to be a sponsor of the conference and be the keeper of the Idaho Rare Plant List, but it was not too many years after that first conference. And that's a partnership that continues to this day. Updating the Rare Plant List is the main focus of today's conference. Everyone's participation in the conference continues to improve the Idaho Rare Plant List. This keeps the list useful, up-to-date, relevant, and credible. This is important because threats to Idaho's rare flora are ongoing and in many places accelerating. You are all authors of the Idaho Rare Plant List. Nearly 40 years since the first one, the conference is still going strong thanks to you. On behalf of Idaho's rare flora, I say thank you for your time, your energy, and your advocacy. I'll end by saying, enjoy the conference and learning about Idaho's rare plant species. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
So I'll run through a couple logistics things. I'm sure most of us are fairly familiar with using Zoom and other online platforms at this time, so hopefully nothing too crazy for anybody. So if you scroll down on your screen, in the bottom left-hand corner, you should see a mute button and a stop video. You can turn yourself on and off with that as far as where people can see you and where you can talk. Once we get going with presentations, I just ask that everybody mute your mics, or unless you're talking, or I will mute them for you. And in order to save bandwidth with the presentations, go ahead and turn your video off unless you're presenting or talking, in which case, please turn your video on. Let's see. You can also, in the middle of your screen, you should see a chat button. If you click on that, the chat will come up. Over in your chat box, you can see in the to screen, right now it's just probably set to everyone. So if you chat anything in there, it will go to everybody that's on the call. There's a drop down arrow there and you can adjust so that you are sending private messages to individual people. I ask that if you see anything going on in the Zoom call that you have concerns about or anything like that, you reach out to Kristen or I directly that way. Let's see. And then we will be recording this presentation, which I think has already happened. So I think most of you guys already got a notification that you're being recorded. And if not, you probably are no longer in this meeting. Right now it's set so everybody can share their screen. So when we're going through presentations, if folks want to share their screen and present that way, they're welcome to do that. If not, I have the presentations uploaded and I will share my screen and we'll just roll through them that way. Shouldn't be too big of a deal. Hopefully we don't have to deal with this, but if we do and we have any sort of Zoom bombing going on during the call, just want folks to know that I will lock the conversation, which means that you guys won't have video or pretty much or access to anything until we get that dealt with. So if anything starts coming up that's inappropriate in the chat, just be prepared for that. I'll let you guys all back in when it's been dealt with. So for voting protocol today, Beth will go through the ranking process. But just as far as for voting on Zoom, if you hover on your screen here on the right, you'll see a reactions button. And if you click on that, there should be a couple rows. There's a top row that's like a clap and a thumbs up. Those are temporary and they don't stay on. But the second row, there is a green check mark that says yes and a red X that says no. And if you click on those, they'll show up in the participant list and they'll stay on until I clear them. So we're going to go ahead and vote that way. If you are good with the ranking that has been decided, vote yes. If you have comments or concerns with that ranking, vote no, and you will likely get called on to answer some questions as to why, so we can get down to the bottom of it and make a decision today. So with that, I will go ahead and introduce Beth with the next presentation for the ranking overview. So Beth Corbin has a BS and MS in botany and plant ecology from UC Davis. She was an agency botanist ecologist for the Forest Service and BLM variously in Northeastern California, Utah, and Southwestern Idaho. She's now very happy to be retired and a volunteer herbarium rat at the College of Idaho, coordinator taskmaster of the Southern Idaho Rare Plant Working Group, and a penstemon and original variogonum nerd wannabe. So with that, here's Beth, and thanks a lot.
First, I'm going to unmute, and then I'm going to try sharing my screen here, so hang on.
We got it on there, Beth.
Okay. Sorry, there's always
Sandra, your cereal's gonna get soggy and you're not gonna eat it.
Okay. Oh, can you see full screen? I hope. Okay. So I'm going to give both of you a rare list for the rankings here. I'm going to do this in warp speed because I just give more time for getting to the actual plants. So I want to call your attention to there's the handouts that I sent the link for a few days ago have a Word document with additional information. And so if any of you find any of this confusing or need to review, I suggest you look at that. Okay. Okay. What? Okay. So what is the Idaho Rare Plant List about? Okay. First of all, who does it? Well, as Michael mentioned, it's kept by the Idaho Native Plant Society with input from all of us, agencies, academics, consultants, everybody here is the author of the Idaho Rare Plant List. What is it? It's plants that are considered vulnerable in Idaho, which we've defined as NatureServe ranks S1, S2, SH, and SX. And so, and we are calling those rare a review. We'll go briefly over what those S things mean. Why do we have an Idaho Rare Plant List? To identify plants of concern and to inform agencies management. Most of the federal agencies use the Idaho Rare Plant List as a basis for their sensitive and special management, special status plants. And likewise, the Idaho Natural Heritage Program uses the plants that are on this list that we determined. Why do we do this at a rare plant conference? Michael covered this actually really well, but we do this because we want to exchange information in a group consensus process. The list is not one or just a few people's recommendations. It's the recommendations of all of us. We are all authors of the Rare Plant List. So where do you find the list? It's available on the INPS website, idahonativeplants.org. So it's there all the time, and also past lists are there. And as Michael said, we usually have a conference every other year, but rare plant working groups, see that acronym RPWG, meet several times between them. And how does that happen? Well, we have a Northern Idaho working group and a Southern Idaho working group. Derek handles the North, I handle the South. And I wanted to throw this picture of nostalgia of when we used to be able to meet in person back in the good old days. And hopefully we'll get back there soon. But these are a couple photos from a couple years ago from the Southern Idaho working group meetings. How do we do the future? Later, NatureServe the ranking consists of this person, the researcher, posts the information to the INPS Rare Plant Working Group Dropbox. For those who've been involved for a while, you may remember that we had a forum, the forum that we posted things to. Well, for technical reasons, that is going away. It hasn't been taken down yet, but it will probably next week. I wanted to kind of give everybody notice about that. The forum has gone away or going away, but the Dropbox is still where we keep our information. And those in the working groups have access to the Dropbox, and that's where we store all the information. And then, the researcher takes that information to the working group meeting, and it's discussed by all in the group, and we update the rank calculator at the working group meeting. So the working group decides on a recommendation for the S rank, which is the state rank. And then those recommendations are what we are taking to the Rare Plant Conference today. And so what today, this next step is what we're doing today. The member presents the working group's recommendation and a brief summary of the factors that went into that ranking. And then we, as Rare Plant Conference participants, discuss as needed and make a final determination on the ranking for this.
Hey Beth, sorry to interrupt you, but do you mind turning your video off? You're breaking up a little bit.
And then, okay, yeah, I saw that my video, that my internet's not very stable. So, okay. The NatureServe ranks, the G rank is the global rank, and we don't usually deal with that. We are focusing on the state level, which is the S rank. T rank would be for variety of subspecies. And then basically it's 1 through 5, being 1 the most critically imperiled, 5 is demonstrably secure. Couple extras, X is extinct, H is historical, SNR stands for state not ranked. So again, we'll see NatureServe for more information on that. Okay, so here's an example for a particular plant that we ranked a few years ago. So Pyrrocoma hirta variety Centrifolia, it's G4, G5. That means that the species, Pyrrocoma hirta, is apparently demonstrably secure globally. You can have kind of a combination G4, G5 if it doesn't fall cleanly within one of those categories. So that refers to the species. The G3 refers to the variety. And so globally, this variety Centrifolia is vulnerable, 3 being vulnerable. And the S2 refers to the Idaho ranking. So this variety is imperiled, S2 is imperiled in Idaho. So that's kind of a translation of the G and T and S ranks. And then we have thrown in on our list, if we have a plus by it, that means it's endemic to Idaho. So Penstemon laxus, G2 plus S2. And if it's an endemic, then the G rank and the S rank will have to be the same always, right? And we've had criteria for prioritizing plants to rank. And so the highest criteria is new information on distribution, taxonomy, or threats. And that's a lot of what we're going to be seeing today is new adds to our list based on new information. Idaho endemics that are on the list that are not ranked yet. All state not ranked on the list. All Idaho endemics, eventually we'd like to get to those, and everything else on the list has to be ranked. So this is what we've been working on for the last several years. The primary factors that go into the rank calculator is basically range abundance and threats. So the range extent is how widely distributed it is within Idaho, is what we're looking at for the S ranking. Area of occupancy is how many areas it actually covers. And this is, NatureServe does this by the number of 4-kilometer grid cells. So how much area it covers within that range extent. The number of occurrences are described are defined as a patch of plants in our case that are at least half a 1 kilometer, half mile from another one. Population size, which may or may not be a good metric for annuals. Population size isn't really a good number to use, but for stable perennials it can be. The number of occurrences or the area of occupancy that with good viability, because if you have, you might have 50 occurrences, but if 90% of them are almost gone, and that's important to know. And then the threats, both the scope and the severity, meaning the scope, meaning how many of the occurrences are threatened by that, and the severity, how severe those threats are, low to high. Those are the primary factors that go into the rank calculator. There's some secondary factors. I'm not going to go over these. They aren't used very much. So we've been doing this, ranking these since 2011. The 2011 Rare Plant Conference is when we started this process. And where are we with what we've been doing? So at the moment, there are 495 plants on the 2020 list. Last time it was updated. On those, 270 of them have been previously ranked at using this process at a Rare Plant Conference between 2011 and 2020. So about 55% of the plants currently on the list have been ranked using our process. That's pretty good. And so now at this conference, we have 7 plants that are currently unranked on the list that we're going to be looking at. We have 20 plants that we're going to be presenting as new additions, and 3 plants that are recommended for removal. So if we get through all of those and the recommendations of the working groups are accepted as presented, then by the end of this conference, we'll have 58% of the final list ranked. So we're making pretty good progress on that. So that is the blasted through version of the process. Let's see, Brittni, do I have time for any questions?
You do, Beth.
Okay, does anyone have any questions on that? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. No. Okay, great. Then we can jump right into getting into the plants. So ahead of schedule, I like this. Couple more notes I want to say before we jump into, Barbara will be our first presenter, but as we're going through these rare plant presentations, I'd like to let you know that these are abbreviated versions of what was presented at the Rare Plant Working Group meetings, where we had lots more discussion on each of these. You're getting the synopsis of them, but additional information is detailed in the species accounts, which I sent links for, so you can look if you have a species that you're particularly interested in. I would suggest that you follow the link there and go find the species account for that. And the species accounts and the rank calculators in these PowerPoints are, stored long-term on the Dropbox. So those of you who are involved in the working groups or would like to be involved in the working groups, and we always welcome new members, can find those in the Dropbox. And if you are interested in that, then we'll let you know how to get into that. The other thing is, as we're going through these plants, I sent a spreadsheet of the plants that are going to be presented for both the Southern working group and the Northern working group out the other day with the agenda. And so those of you interested in the details, I would suggest you take a look at that spreadsheet as we go along. And what is on that spreadsheet is what will go on to the rare plant list for that species with any changes or anything from this rare plant conference. So you can follow along on that. Notice that there's 5 more plants on the spreadsheet than there are on the agenda for the Southern group. And that's because we're hoping to get to those as well. We have the priority ones that are on the agenda, but we have 5 more that we're hoping we're going to have time to get to today. And I think we probably will. Another just kind of note I want to make is that another one of your handouts was the, or actually it was a link. It wasn't a handout, it was a link to the working species summaries. It shows the plants that are in progress within each of the working groups, including those that we're not presenting yet at this conference. And so you can see who's researching a plant. And if you happen to have any information on any of those plants, please contact that researcher and make sure that they have your updated information, because the whole point of this, of course, is we want to have the best available information for each plant to inform our ranking decision. I think that's everything I wanted to say about the introductions on this. So, okay, Barbara will be up first, and she is going to tell us about a newly named variety for Idaho. And so this is kind of exciting. So Barbara, are you going to run the PowerPoint, or did you want Brittni to run it?
Brittni, I don't know if I even have a copy.
Okay, great. Brittni can do that for you.
Well, this is happening. I'll let people know I've proposed this plant as the unofficial, if you will, symbol for this particular rare plant conference because it's pared down to the bare minimum. But sorry, there's no flag to go with it. Let's see. So this is not yet. See, I don't know, do I have control to get it into, how do I make it into full screen mode?
I think Brittni has to do that.
Okay.
Okay, so what are you guys seeing here?
We're seeing the presentation mode with all of the different boxes.
Oh boy.
Just hit swap presenter view and slideshow. That might work.
There we go.
There you go.
There we
Yeah.
go. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so this is Montia parvifolia, variety batholithica, with the proposed name of batholith spring beauty, Mantiaceae, which is previously Portulacaceae. Newly described, so no previous rank, we're recommending S2. Carol put this together with me. So let's see, next, I don't know if I can advance this or, okay. So just a little bit of overview. The species itself, Montia parvifolia, the little leaf spring beauty, is also basically unranked. Does enter Idaho, not as much as shown there. It's a succulent perennial. At least this is what you get out of the descriptions of it. Sometimes mat forming, leaves mostly basal, stem leaves alternate, which is one of the unique features for in Montia, often forming bulblets at the leaf axils. The reports from Nevada, Utah, Southern Idaho, and Southeast Oregon are erroneous as far as we could determine. So that Flora of North America map is not completely correct. Next. But it gives you an idea of its range. Next, okay. Do want to mention the nomenclatural confusion, keeping track. This is Montia parvifolia, leaf. There is also Montia parviflora, Claytonia parviflora. I mean, they're all and you'll routinely find the two names flipped back and forth, reports confused as a result, even the common names carried over some confusion. And, we had to keep correcting and doing this, that, would flip the name back and forth. No, it's Montia parvifolia. Okay, next. A lot of variation in the species that's sometimes been treated as separate, but they're not currently recognized in FNA pending revision with modern techniques. Next. But what about the plants from Central Idaho, high elevations that I've been worried about for decades? They're smaller than other populations, seldom flower, not evidently perennial, disjunct in elevation and south of other Idaho populations. And we figured they were probably of conservation concern if taxonomically distinct. Next. So as a result, Carol, Don, and a couple of students, I noticed Graham's on this call, focused on the Central Idaho variant, did a combination of, field studies, standard taxonomic analysis, common garden, growing them together to confirm what's different. And Carol and Don and one of the students also did a morphometric analysis that kind of bolstered the conclusions. But we came to the conclusion that Central Idaho form is worth recognizing a distinct variety and decided to move ahead. Next. Next slide. We moved ahead with describing it as a new variety while still saying, we're not saying anything about the rest of the species. We're just looking at this one little thing. So it is now published. This is in the Dropbox for anybody who wants more information on it. Next. This is what the plant looks like. Tiny little thing, as I said, pared down to the bare minimum. Picture of the isotype. Those little round leaves and the thread-like, flagelliform vegetative stems. And then occasionally it has separate stems that are stiffer and more erect, and those are the ones that bear the flowers. Next. Again, you can see the habitat. It's the little teeny round leaves on that shelf above Alexa. And then a close up, not your big conspicuous plant. Next. The pink dots in Idaho and Montana are the circled area there too, in the Bighorn Crags, but also scattered in Montana. To give you an idea, that's the range of it. The black dots show the variant that comes closest to, but it's at lower elevations while this is at high elevations. More work to be done, but we were just trying to focus on the new variety. Next. We know it from basically two population clusters in the Western Salmon River Mountains around McCall, but also in the Bighorn Crags. It's endemic to what's called the High Idaho batholith ecoregion, which is this archipelago of high elevations. Those are the little white areas that are scattered around. And those would be the possible areas to look for additional populations. Next, but probably on granite. It's pretty much just on granite. There's three forms of Montia parvifolia in Idaho. There's the typical variety, mostly in the Panhandle, with one highly disjunct population or old collection from Clark County that'd be interesting to relocate. There's the variety batholithica on granite. But there's also an intermediate form between the two that's in the unglaciated Clearwater River drainage. And that's on multiple substrates. So different habitat type, different substrates, and elevationally different from the ones in the high Idaho batholith. Next. Just here's the three forms, one in the field of the typical form in the Panhandle, and just two that are growing side by side, the variety batholithica being smaller off to the right than the more intermediate sized and other things from the Clearwater drainage. Next. More work worth doing, but we just did the one. In the publication, we did discuss the conservation status, saying it probably, deserves, even if there are additional populations, we can affirm that they're seldom encountered even when we keep an eye out for them. climate change is the most obvious threat. But we also thought, well, mining and recreation could also do it. Next. Here's the range extent calculation. Just looking at Idaho, though there is the possibility, if it's that close in Montana, that maybe it is just across the border in the Bitterroots too, but we don't have that yet. So just going with what we've got. Next. Okay, so ranking factors, 14 collections for Idaho in Idaho, Lemhi and Valley counties, mostly Valley. 1,189 square miles, which is D, area of occupancy, 12 grid cells, D, number of occurrences, 12, B, population size, unknown. I don't think of them as that big of populations. Okay, viability with no immediate threats from the high elevation, C, but we give it a overall threat impact of high to medium due mostly to climate change and the outside chance of mining and recreation. The calculated rank was S2 question mark. Next. We recommend just going straight with S2, adding to the Idaho Rare Plant List, and that recommending the Forest Service add it to species of concern. This would be the Payette and the Salmon Chalice National Forest, possibly the northern part of the Boise National Forest, but nothing quite confirmed there yet. Next, or is this the last one? Okay, I think that might be the last one. Yes, okay. So that's my presentation. Comments, questions? I'll turn it back over to Beth to be the MC on this.
Okay, great. Thank you, Barbara. So kind of exciting, a new variety for Idaho, and we're recommending it add as an S2. Are there any discussion, questions, concerns, comments? Feel free to unmute yourself at this point if you do have a question. Okay, if not now, then go to your reactions down below, and if you agree with this, do the little green check. And so then we will start to see those popping up by your names. And if you do not agree, then I would have hoped you would have said something first, but if you do not agree, you can use the little red X, and we have a little bit of time for discussion. Note that we gave Barbara more time on this one than more detail on this particular plant than you'll hear on lots of the others because it is a new species. So don't expect that much level of detail on all the rest of them. Okay, I'm seeing lots of, let's see, Brittni, can you maybe stop screen sharing? There we go, so we can see more people. Not everybody's voted, but so please, anybody have a question on that little reaction thing? Again, in the lower right on the screen, at least on mine, there's a reactions button, and go to that. And on the second row, there's green arrows or green checks or a red X. So you can press the little green arrow, the green check if you agree with this ranking.
Perfect, Beth.
Okay,
And I've got
well,
a few people who are going to abstain because they're new to the group and wanted to make sure they know what's going on first.
Okay, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Okay, I don't see anybody who is objecting, and so I think we are going to then add this as an S2 to the Idaho Rare Plant List. So that is the process. Great, thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Okay, up next is Don Mansfield, and this is not a newly named species, but it is a new potential new add for Idaho. So he's going to tell us about Astragalus, mollissimus, thompsoniae. And Don, I assume you want Brittni to run your PowerPoint as well?
Yes, that would be what I'd like. Thank you.
Okay, take it away, Don.
Thanks, Brittni. Okay, here we go. This is a new species to Idaho. It's well established in Nevada and Utah, but we got a range extension with this plant. This was first noted and brought to people's attention by Michael Lauer, I think high school teacher in the Boise area, Treasure Valley, who was out hiking in the Chalk Hills Formation in the Owyhee Front, and came across a plant, brought it to the attention of Holly Hovis, who went out and collected the specimen you see here. And we realized that this was a new plant in Idaho. The plant was recollected again, and we have fruit, and so we'll run you through how you distinguish it from other loco weeds. But this is Astragalus mollissimus var. Thompsoniae. Brittni, go ahead and next slide. So Astragalus mollissimus Thompsoniae is a tufted perennial. You got hairs. It looks a lot like, I guess that's on the next slide, like other robust astragalus, like Astragalus pershii, or maybe nudisilicuus. Any rate, its NatureServe is G5 T4. It's not ranked in Idaho, and so we figured we'd better take a look at it. The main distinction here, it's out, the habitat's Chalk Hills, open shrubland out in the Owyhee Front. That's the only place it's known in Idaho by now 3 collections. I'll show you that in a minute. Next slide, Brittni. This is the range distribution of the var. Thompsoniae. You can see it's in Utah, Nevada, down south into Arizona, northern New Mexico, and western Colorado. But the variety Thompsoniae is new to Idaho. There are 3 records now, none on Bonap because these are all recent. Actually, we know of 4. There's another one that came to our attention just last week since this presentation was prepared. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Next slide. These are the 3 known collections. Once we found this, the identity was confirmed by Aaron Liston, as well as me on Holly Hovis's collection. And in the process of looking through for other astragalus in the SRP herbarium, I discovered that in 2018, Jim Smith had made 2 collections, and I annotated those to this species, and they are additional records then. Again, on the Chalk Hills Formation, out this time in Castle Creek, as opposed to over near Jacks Creek. Next slide. There you can see the bilocular pod. This is the range extent, 30 square miles. There's the Michael Lauer collection, Holly Hovis collection. Michael Lauer found it. Here are 2 that Jim Smith collected. And although it's not going to change us recently, Sandy showed me a picture. And well, as you know, as Peter Raven said, a report that is a picture without a voucher is nothing more than a rumor. So we have a rumor that there is another collection right here where the pointer is. Can you see my pointer? I don't know. Just to the left of the uppermost yellow dot on the other side of Castle Creek. It looks like there's another one. Threats are grazing weeds, potential vehicle impacts, and mining. There's a large mine right near the site where the unvouchered report is. So 3 EOs, range 30 square miles. Next. That's an A, area of occupancy, 3 cells, that's C, number of occurrences, that's an A. Unknown population size, we're going to go out this spring and check it out. Overall impact is threat impact is high, primarily because of the fact that these are popular areas for OHV traffic. Grazing and weeds probably a little less on these particular sites, but mining is high. The calculated rank is S1, the recommended rank is S1. Next slide. So we recommend S1, add to the rare plant list, revisit locations. We plan to go out this spring, add to Boise BLM special status list. And I think that's the last slide. Any questions, comments? Your turn, Beth.
Okay, thank you, Don. So this is, as Don said, new records for Idaho. So it'll be a new add to the list as an S1 because it's a very small area and only a few. So last chance for questions or comments on this one. Nope. Okay, let's go ahead and vote. So yes, go ahead and vote either the green check, or I guess some people are not seeing the green check. And so you can use the thumbs up. But so you are agreeing with the S1 ranking and adding to the rare plant list. Okay, I'm seeing lots of green checks. I'm not seeing any red checks or red X's. So great. Okay, next is Steve Love, and he has two species he's going to tell us about. The first one is Orthocarpus holmgreniorum, which we talked about just last time, 2 years ago. At that time, we added it to the list as a state historic, but Steve has exciting news. So take it away, Steve. And Steve, okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to speak on two assessments that I've completed over the past couple of years. And one is Orthocarpus holmgreniorum, the other is Solidago nana. And I'm going to take more time on the Orthocarpus holmgreniorum because I think it's a more interesting story. The other one's fairly simple. But I presented this at the Rare Plant Conference a couple of years ago. This is a species that Beth put me onto, and I agreed to try to complete an assessment. And so I have done that. I completed it on what existed in the Herbarium Records to begin with, and presented that 2 years ago. And then this last year, I've been able to do a little more work on it. So I'll go with, I'll kind of explain the process that I've been through. But we recommended and had accepted as state historical the last time through. And this time, when I get done with this presentation, we will recommend it as a rank S1 for Idaho. So this is a species that was originally listed or identified, categorized as a subspecies of Orthocarpus thompsoniae, which is a yellow flowered species. And this particular species was, Leila Schultz suggested that we actually make this a separate species, and now this has been accepted and is listed in NatureServe as not a subspecies of thompsoniae, but as a separate species, Orthocarpus holmgreniorum. Originally, as I sought occurrences of this species in Idaho, I found two historical herbarium records, and one came out of, and these were records that came from and actually was listed by Leila Schultz in her discussion of and recommendation that this, in her paper recommending that this be considered a separate species. And one of those, and this plant occurs mostly down in Utah. I've been in the Monte Cristo area, southeast of Logan, and seen numerous plants of this particular species. But it was supposed to have been collected in Mill Canyon in Franklin County, and there's an arrow there showing that that spot. and in Elk Valley, over close to the Wyoming border in Caribou County. And neither of these had been confirmed. They were old records, one 1916, not one 1922. Noel Holmgren and his wife were actually seeking trying to confirm that this species was present in locations other than where we see a lot of it down in Utah. And they started looking, and they've actually looked personally in a lot of places in southern Idaho where it was supposed to be present. And in their searching, they also found 2 additional herbarium records. And they sent this information to Beth, and she shared it with me. And it turns out that these are duplicates of that were collected at the same spot, and that were collected in Bear Lake County. And they were collected just, you see this one in the red, just kind of north and west of Ovid, which is straight west of Montpelier, just a little town there. And that's where the road takes off, that Highway 36 that goes from Montpelier over the pass down into Preston. So now we have 3 occurrences, 2 historical, well, all 3 historical, but none that had been previously been confirmed. But it did give me some places to start to look. And I have never tried to confirm the location at Mill Canyon. Part of the problem is it's very difficult to access, even if you know which Mill Canyon people are talking about, because there are multiple Mill Canyons there. But I did during the foray last year, not last year, but in 2020, went out to Elk Valley and spent a day trying to look to see if I could confirm it's present there in that spot. And I was unable to find any. And so then after I got these samples from Ovid, I took some time, and after the American Penstemon Society meeting last year down in Preston, went up into that Ovid area and tried to see if I could find this plant there. So the 1945 record is just directly to the west of Ovid, south of Liberty, 2 little towns there. We kind of tried to get as close to that spot as we could, my wife and I, and it's all been, since the record, it's all been developed into mostly farmland and hay production. And we just couldn't see that that could probably exist as a population any longer. However, it did give us a new place to look. So we went around to this area and looked. And one of the places that I went was up close to the Forest Service lands, in Forest Service Road 401. This is a road that goes back into some recreational areas and to a Boy Scout camp. And so my wife and I went up there. We only had a few hours before it got dark, but went up and found some very typical kind of habitat. And I based my perception of typical on where I had seen it down in Utah. And anyway, we got out of the car, found one place, got out of the car, walked around, didn't find any. Drove a little farther along the road, got out, and stepped on one almost immediately. And I'm going, whoa, that was cool. So anyway, we confirmed that this species still exists in Idaho. And then I thought, well, that was easy. I'm sure we're just not finding it because we just haven't looked enough. If it was that easy to find, we'll find it some more. And so this is one of the plants that I took a picture of. I went back. I took an herbarium sample that day, and then I went back, and my wife and I spent another day looking in the Elk Valley area and in this area, and spent many more hours searching, and we didn't find any. we didn't find any place that we looked. But the one collection that we did make was on that Forest Service Road 401 at Camp Bartlett, on Camp Bartlett Road in Bear Lake County. And it's in kind of a shallow wash. This plant kind of grows where water either runs or sets in the springtime and then dries up and becomes very droughty during the summer months. And I collected enough samples there to create 3 duplicate specimens that I submitted to Ray J. Davis Stillager and the Intermountain Herbariums. And this is what the habitat looks like where it grows. So as I mentioned, we made those additional searches both in Elk Valley and Ovid. And this is the area that we searched. We went on as many little roads, paths, whatever we could find in that area that's that the vertical part of that triangle is about 10 miles and the horizontal is or 15 miles and the horizontal is about maybe 8 or 9 miles. And we spent all day looking there and we didn't find any other plants. So I think it is rare in Idaho, but does exist. So we went through the ranking process. The range extent we considered to be right now, from what we know, less than 100 square miles. The area of occupancy, and that's based on both the historical and the new current confirmed record. And the area of occupancy is 3 4-kilometer square grid cells. The number of occurrences is 1 confirmed, 3 historical. The population size is less than 200 individuals. I walked all around that area, and that's what I estimated to be in just an area maybe 200 yards in diameter. And that does appear, though, to be a site with good viability, although it does have threats. It is, as near as I can tell, on private land and could be subject to any number of threats as time goes on. And some of the threats that are immediate are cattle grazing, recreation, weeds, and agriculture. And it's pretty rocky, so I don't think it will ever be farmed, that particular site, but it could be developed in a number of other different ways. So anyway, with all of that put together, we generated a suggested rank of State 1, and the Rare Plant Working Group accepted that and assigned it as S1, and that's what we propose to the entire group, that we take it off the state historical list and list this as an S1 as a rare plant in Idaho. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
You are welcome. And it's been a lot of fun working on this one.
Okay. Thanks for Steve. I think this is a great story. We identified. It's a success story. We like success stories. So
Yeah, you're breaking up a lot. I don't know why.
Known to exist in one good viable population in Idaho. That's good for me in nursing.
Hey,
Can't much to
I'm
that.
not sure what the issue is, but you're breaking up quite a bit.
Okay. Go ahead. If no further questions. Okay. Well, can you hear me now?
Just barely.
I don't know. Let's go ahead and vote then. Okay.
Or not, just let them
Okay.
in.
Vote. And if any questions, go ahead and speak up, but let's vote. I'm seeing checks.
There's nobody named that one, but, oh yeah, there is, okay.
Okay, so I think everybody who's going to vote has voted. I'm seeing lots of green checks. So we are agreeing to S1, move it from SH to S1 for the state of Idaho and maintain it on our rare plant list. Good. Thank you, Steve. Now let's hear about Solidago nana.
Okay. So this one was a little simpler, but this was a species that we had never assessed before in Idaho. We knew there were herbarium specimens, but we didn't know what the extent, the range extent was, or how many viable populations existed. And so I went into I haven't looked for this plant. I'm not even sure I've actually seen it on the ground, but some of you have, because there are herbarium samples with your names on them. But it is a species that exists in southeast Idaho and then on up into the southern central mountain area of Idaho. So when I get done, we will make a recommended rank for this species of S3 and take it off of the not ranked list. Okay, let's see. So this is a small Solidago. It looks a lot like multiradiata, which is a higher elevation species, and it has some morphological distinctions. And one of the main ones is that multiradiata has glabrous leaves, and this has heavily pubescent leaves, and also a few other minor distinctions that exist on the plants as well. And then one of the other differences with this species is it tends not to be a high elevation plant. It grows in the down in the lower valleys, in the places where it exists, and on the salt flats and moist areas and other places that are quite different from where multiradiata would exist. So NatureServe ranks this as a G5, so in its entire range, it is not a rare plant, but and it has no agency status by any of the major federal agencies. And I've kind of described it, and I've described where it grows, and so I'll move on from that slide, but we just needed to see where it landed in Idaho. So I looked carefully in several of the herbariums, both the consortiums as well as individual herbarium records, and was able to document 39 occurrences of this species within Idaho, 39 distinct, not repetitive, but distinct occurrences. And you can see the list of counties. I'll show you those on a map. And anyway, we also, I assessed those situations where they were at just as well as I could without being on the ground, and found that they were high to medium threats that include grazing, recreation, agriculture, and residential development. This is where on this map is where the occurrences are placed. And in places like the Central Idaho locations in Lemhi and Custer and Blaine counties, I think that they're on public lands, and I think those in those locations there, or at least a number of those occurrences are on public lands, and are probably have relatively few serious risks. But in places like down in Caribou County, where it exists around Alexander Reservoir, in around Soda Springs, and down in Bear Lake, I think there are very significant threats to those populations. So Beth helped me create a range extent map, and so this is what the map looks like. Goes all the way from down to in the Bear Lake, Preston area, northeast to near Stanley, and where it has actually been collected in Boise County in the very eastern point in that county, and then up into the Island Park area, and then exists in little pockets throughout that entire area. And that's about a 23,000 square mile area. Oops. Okay, and so this is when we did the calculations, we converted the square miles into square kilometers, and we considered it to be somewhat a sparsely distributed species, and maybe considered peripheral to the main populations down in Utah and east into Wyoming. And we created a polygon of 56,443 kilometers in Idaho, which is an F, categorized as an F. And we assume that there are these 39 occurrences exist as 4 kilometer square grid cells, which ranks it as an E. But anyway, the population sizes are unknown. Many of these sites probably have good viability, but we don't know for sure, but we assume that some do and some probably don't. Anyway, the overall threat impact, we consider, after discussion, considered it moderate, and I've already discussed the threat factors. And so when it all shook out, we ranked this as a committee. I recommended it. We accepted it as the working group committee to be ranked as an S3. So the ranking status then we suggest to you is S3, and we will add it to the Idaho Rare Plant list because it is an S3, and then we don't really have any management recommendations for this, but we do recommend that people continue to look for it and add more specimens to the number of herbarium specimens that already exist. And with that, Beth, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So again, this is a new add to our list. It's one that's moderately wide distributed in Idaho, but still has relatively few records. So it comes out as an S3. And so that is the recommendation. Are there any questions or discussions about that?